Today's story is so dark it left scars, unfolding across the scorched streets of the Old West, where vultures circle high above and mercy is considered weakness. This is a land where innocence and brutality meet, where one wrong move can decide whether you live free or disappear forever. It started with a public humiliation. A woman struck in front of a cheering crowd. A moment meant to break her, but instead, it awakened something far more dangerous than fear. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The Arizona sun pressed down on Tombstone's Main Street like hot iron seared into skin. The summer of 1887 showed no mercy, bleaching the wood of storefronts until they looked ready to burn at the slightest spark. The air carried the sour bite of cheap whiskey from the Lucky Strike saloon, tangled with horse sweat, drifting dust, and the quiet stink of despair that clung to mining towns long past their glory. Edgar Pike's auction yard squatted at the corner of Allen and Fifth, a wide basin of suffering where money changed hands and dignity was traded away. Pike stood atop a stack of shipping crates, barking prices in a voice worn raw from selling everything imaginable: tools, cattle, and people unlucky enough to fall into debt or cross the wrong man. Rough hands shoved Clara Hale forward, rope biting into her wrists, scraping against fingers hardened from chalk and school slates. She was 22, and she had come to Tombstone half a year earlier believing she could teach miners' children their letters. Instead, she'd been caught in a snare of lies and bribed judges. The theft charge was Edgar Pike's doing. She had rejected him once too often, and now she stood under the open sky, waiting to be sold like livestock. The crowd tightened in around her. Failed prospectors, idle gunmen, claim owners watching their fortunes dry up. Clara recognized faces she'd passed on Sundays, men who once tipped their hats, now measuring her worth the way they'd judge a horse. "Turn around," Pike ordered, yellow teeth flashing in a merchant's grin. "Let the gentlemen see what they're paying for." Clara stiffened, eyes fixed on the far edge of the crowd. "I'll stand as I am." A murmur rippled through the yard. Women didn't answer back at Pike's auctions. Everyone knew that. "I said turn," Pike snapped, his voice cutting sharp as the Bowie knife on his belt. "And I said no." The slap came like a pistol shot. Roy Cutter's hand cracked across her cheek, sending her stumbling to the dirt, bound wrists useless to catch her fall. Blood filled her mouth, metallic and warm, as fire spread across her face. Cutter swayed, reeking of raw whiskey and trail dust. 4 men at his back laughed, men with more ammunition than teeth. "Someone ought to teach this woman some manners," he slurred, lifting his hand again. The laughter died. A shape stepped out from the shadow of Halford's corner saloon, moving with the easy glide of smoke over water. The Apache warrior looked no older than 30, yet his eyes carried a depth that felt ancient. His clothing was traditional, but altered for war. Leather strengthened with steel, moccasins silent on packed earth. A Winchester rode easy in his hands, twin Colts resting in a rig that blended Apache craft with frontier steel. He spoke a single word. "Enough." The voice was low, barely raised, yet it reached every edge of the yard. Men who'd faced bandits and claim jumpers found themselves edging back without knowing why. Cutter squinted, trying to focus. "What's this? A tame Indian playing hero?" He jerked his chin at his men. "Looks like we got ourselves an Apache who thinks he's white folk." Hands drifted toward holsters, a fatal choice. What followed would be argued over in Tombstone saloons for years. Some swore the Apache never moved, that the guns simply appeared in his hands. Others claimed they saw the draw, but it came so fast it looked like lightning given shape. 3 shots, 3 men down. One spun into a water trough, shoulder torn open. Another dropped screaming into the dust, clutching his leg. The third lost his hat and part of his ear in the same breath. Between shots, the Apache shifted like wind, never in the same place twice. When the echoes faded, he stood 10 feet from where he'd begun, weapons leveled at the survivors. "Your men live because I allow it," he said calmly. His English was accented, precise. "They can leave. You—" His gaze locked on Roy Cutter, cold enough to freeze blood. "You struck a woman. Among my people, that makes you lower than a dog." Cutter's drunken courage drained away. His fingers twitched near his gun, counting odds he knew he couldn't beat. The crowd had drawn back into a wide ring now, even Edgar Pike retreating from his platform. Clara forced herself up onto her knees, spitting blood into the dirt. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard her own voice. "Don't kill him." Both men turned, surprised. "Don't kill him," she said again, dragging herself upright. "Dead men teach nothing, but a man stripped of pride and comfort carries that lesson everywhere." The Apache studied her for a long heartbeat. Something shifted behind his eyes. Then he moved. Cutter's gun never cleared leather. The rifle butt slammed into his stomach, folding him in half. In moments, the outlaw was disarmed, his belt stripped away, boots yanked off, pockets emptied. "The woman shows more mercy than you deserve," the Apache said evenly. "So you will walk. No horse, no water, no boots. Walk until the sun humbles you, or the desert takes you." Roy Cutter's face went pale. Bare feet on Arizona ground meant cactus spines, scorpions, burning sand, and arriving in the next town, ruined. "You can't," he started. The Winchester rose, unhurried. "Walk," the Apache said, "or be carried." Cutter chose to walk. "The woman shows more mercy than you deserve," the Apache said, taking a step back. "So you will walk. No horse, no water, no boots. Walk until the sun humbles you, or until the desert takes you. Choose." Roy Cutter's face drained from red to a sickly white. Bare feet in the Arizona desert meant cactus thorns, scorpions, and sand hot enough to blister skin. It meant reaching the next town as a crawling beggar, his name stripped of whatever fear it once carried. "You can't. This ain't lawful," he muttered. The Winchester lifted with unhurried ease. "Walk," the Apache said, "or be carried." Roy Cutter chose to walk. The crowd split apart as he staggered off, his socks already shredding against stone and grit. The men who could still stand followed him, limping and silent, leaving their guns behind without being told. The Apache watched until they vanished at the edge of town. Only then did he turn to Clara Hale, drawing a knife and cutting the rope from her wrists in a single clean motion. "You are free." She rubbed her raw skin, studying the stranger who had shattered the yard with nothing but his presence. "Free to what?" she asked. "I have no money, no horse, nowhere to go. That's just another prison." "Then take his," the Apache replied, nodding toward the pile of Cutter's discarded belongings. "Horse is outside the saloon, strong animal, fool owner." "And you?" Clara asked, surprised by her own voice. "Why involve yourself? This wasn't your fight." For the first time, something like pain flickered across the warrior's face. "Every fight against those who sell human beings is my fight." He turned away, then paused. "My name is Nantan. If you are wise, you will ride east. This territory grows darker by the day." Clara looked at the thinning crowd, at Edgar Pike already counting his losses, at blood soaking into the dust. She thought of the children she had come to teach, of hopes burned down to ash. And she thought of this Apache who moved like death, yet spoke of justice. "Or," she said, the words escaping before fear could stop them. "I could ride with you." Nantan turned back, his expression unreadable. Overhead, turkey vultures circled in lazy patience. The sun crawled on, indifferent. Somewhere far off, a mission bell marked the hour. The auction yard lay empty now except for them. A warrior driven by vengeance, a teacher searching for purpose, and the long shadows of choices yet unmade stretching across blood-darkened ground. Late afternoon light spilled over Tombstone streets as Clara stood alone, her cheek still burning from Roy Cutter's hand. Blood lingered on her tongue, bitter as the truth settling in her chest. Freedom, she was learning, wore many faces, and not all of them promised rescue. Nantan had already started away, his stride steady, dismissive. Clara felt the weight of Cutter's coin purse in her palm, maybe $40 in mixed bills and coin. Enough for a few nights' meals, a bed, perhaps a stage ticket to Tucson. And after that? No school board would touch a woman who had stood on an auction block. Innocence be damned. "Wait," she called. Her voice carried, even through the swelling in her jaw. Nantan stopped, but did not turn. "I gave you freedom and means," he said. "Use them well. Freedom to run, to hide." Clara moved closer, aware of townsfolk giving them wide space. "That isn't freedom. It's the same cage, just wider." He turned then, dark eyes weighing her. Up close, she saw the marks of hard travel etched into him, the weathering of years beneath open sky. A scar traced his left forearm, old and deep. "You know nothing of cages," he said quietly. "Don't I?" Clara shot back. "6 months ago, I came west to teach children their letters. Now I'm bruised, bloodied, and branded like property." She met his stare. "Tell me, what's the difference between what happened to your sister and what almost happened to me?" Nantan's reaction was instant. His hand snapped to his knife, muscle tightening like a coiled snake. "You know nothing of my sister." "I know enough," Clara said, standing her ground though her heart pounded. "The way you speak of slavers, that's personal. The look in your eyes when you see me, that's memory." They stood frozen in the dust, two wounded lives measuring each other across a divide of culture and pain. At last, Nantan's hand fell away. "Her name was Ayana," he said, the words torn from him like splinters. 14 summers old when the Comancheros took her. Sold to silver mines in Sonora." He stopped, jaw tightening. "By the time I found her, the mountain had already claimed her. A cave-in. They never even marked where the workers were buried." Clara felt the weight of his loss settle heavy in her chest, close to her own smaller griefs. "I'm sorry." "Sorry changes nothing," Nantan replied. Nantan turned toward the hitching rail where Roy Cutter's horse waited. A solid bay mare, well-built and steady-eyed. "Take the horse," he said. "Ride east. Leave this place behind." Then, without looking back, "I ride south. I don't chase ghosts." He was already checking the mare's tack, fingers quick and sure on the worn leather. "Not ghosts," he added. "Men who trade in suffering. The Comanchero network still breathes. I follow its tracks. I break its chains wherever I find them." Clara Hale stepped closer, resting her hand on the mare's neck. The animal leaned into the touch, calm and trusting, far better cared for than its former owner deserved. "You're hunting Victor Varga," Clara said. Nantan's hands stilled. "You know that name." "Every woman in this territory knows it," Clara replied. "Victor Varga makes widows and orphans. He sells anyone he can't ransom." She met his eyes. 3 days ago, 2 children vanished from the Mexican quarter, a boy of 10, a girl of 7. Everyone knows. No one acts. The law is either bought or afraid. She swallowed. Evan Morrison and Lily Morrison. Their father died in the mines last winter. Their mother, Mary Morrison, takes in washing. She came to me yesterday, begging. Bitterness edged her voice. I told her to go to the sheriff. We both know how well trusting the law worked out for me. Nantan finished adjusting the tack and stepped back. This changes nothing. You are not prepared for what lies ahead. This is not a dime novel fantasy. It's war, he continued, flat and certain, fought in shadows, paid for in blood. And what am I prepared for? Clara shot back. Teaching? They branded me a thief. Marriage? She gave a short, hollow laugh. What man would have me now? Factory work back east? She shook her head. I spent 6 months learning this land, every trail, every waterhole, believing knowledge would keep me safe. I was wrong about safety. But the knowledge remains. Knowledge is not ability, Nantan said. Can you shoot, track, move like death through Apache land? I can learn. Learning costs time. Mistakes cost lives, Clara answered. Mine, and the lives of those I refuse to abandon. She took a breath, then played her final card. Then leave me behind. Ride south alone. And when you reach their camps, when you need someone who can pass as merchandise to get inside, when you need bait to draw them out, what then? Will you fight 20 men alone? Storm fortified ground like some legend carved into stone? Nantan's face did not change, but Clara saw it land true. He had been hunting alone. Months, maybe years. How many chances had slipped through his fingers because he had no one who could walk where he could not? You think yourself clever, he said at last. I think myself desperate, Clara replied. The honesty surprised them both. Desperate with purpose is better than free without meaning, she went on. Those children are real. Evan, Lily, their mother's tears are real. The Comancheros leave no loose ends, Nantan warned. They kill witnesses. They erase threats. The trail leads through hostile ground to men who would use you in ways that make Edgar Pike's auction seem merciful. Then teach me how not to break, Clara said. Nantan studied her for a long moment, looking past the torn schoolteacher's dress and bruised skin to the iron beneath. You would truly risk this? He asked. Knowing that when we find them, they may already be lost? Yes. Knowing you could die hard, far from any comfort? Yes. Knowing I offer no promise except that I will hunt my enemies until my final breath? I'm not asking for promises, Clara said, squaring her shoulders. I'm asking for a chance to make my freedom matter. Nantan circled her slowly, judging as a trader might judge a horse, but by different measures. He noted her steady hands, the way she held her weight, the resolve that kept her spine straight despite exhaustion. 3 conditions, he said at last. First, you are not my partner. You are an asset. I train you. I use you. When I give an order, you obey without hesitation. Questions come later. In the moment, my word is law. Clara nodded. Agreed. Second, we travel Apache way, hard miles, cold camps, no comfort. You keep pace, or you're left behind. I understand. Third, when we find the children, if we find them, their lives come before vengeance. No scores settled until innocents are safe. That sounds like mercy, Clara said quietly. Nantan's mouth curved into something that was not a smile. Mercy is letting enemies live long enough to fear your name. Justice, Nantan said, voice flat as stone, is making sure they never take another child. He let that settle, then turned to his own horse, a painted Mustang that looked like it had been cut from dusk and wind. From his saddlebags he drew a gun belt, old but cared for, holding a converted Navy Colt. This belonged to a Comanchero who doesn't need it anymore. You wear it. Always. You practice every day. He pressed it into Clara Hale's hands. The leather was stiff, the steel heavier than she expected. Weight with purpose. When you can put 6 shots into a playing card at 20 paces, he added, we talk about what comes next. Clara's throat tightened. When do we leave? Now, Nantan replied. Those children were taken 3 days ago. They could already be across the border. We ride to Contention City first. Pick up the trail where witnesses last saw riders heading south. Now? Clara glanced down at her torn dress, her teaching clothes smeared with dust and blood. I have nothing. No supplies. No proper clothes. Good, Nantan said. You learn faster with nothing. He swung into his saddle as if the motion cost him no effort. First lesson. Everything you need you take from the ones who'd harm you, or you pull it out of the land itself. Comfort makes you soft. Necessity makes you dangerous. Clara wrestled the unfamiliar belt into place, finally settling it on her hips. It felt wrong and right at once, alien, yet inevitable. She gathered her shredded skirts and mounted Roy Cutter's bay mare, grateful for the childhood hours she'd spent riding her father's workhorses. As they turned toward the edge of town, Clara caught their reflection in a shop window. An Apache warrior in practical, modernized traditional gear, and a battered schoolteacher wearing a gunfighter's rig. 2 people tied together by purpose, not warmth, by need, not trust. One more thing, Nantan said as Tombstone's last buildings fell behind them. You asked to ride with me. Understand this. I hunt alone. I fight alone. I trust alone. You are a tool in this war. Maybe useful. Maybe not. He didn't look at her when he spoke. Do not expect friendship. Do not expect protection beyond what serves the mission. Do not expect survival. Clara met his cold profile with steady eyes. I expect nothing, she said, except the chance to find those children. Everything else I'll earn, or die trying. Something flickered in Nantan's gaze. Surprise, maybe, or the faintest trace of approval. Then he touched his heels to the Mustang's flanks, and they rode into the thickening dusk, leaving Tombstone's false promises behind. The desert opened up in front of them, wide, harsh, and unforgiving, secrets carved into stone and sand. Somewhere beyond the horizon, 2 children waited in darkness, and somewhere between town and wilderness, a teacher was already becoming something else, or she would be buried by the attempt. The change had started. The desert did not teach gently. By their 3rd day out of Tombstone, Clara understood that everything she'd once called survival was only the first page of a book written in thorns and thirst. Stop, Nantan ordered, raising his hand as they crested a low rise. Below them, the trail they'd been riding split into 3 directions. He dismounted in one smooth motion and dropped into a crouch, reading the ground like it was printed text. Clara stayed in the saddle at first, scanning the horizon the way he'd drilled into her. The land stretched out forever, saguaro cacti standing like silent sentries, creosote perfuming the hot air with its sharp resin bite. Her dress, once meant for a schoolhouse, was now torn and stained from hard miles. She'd ripped away the lower hem for easier riding, piecing crude leggings from canvas traded at a way station. What do you see? Nantan asked without lifting his head. Clara slid down carefully, muscles aching, and knelt beside him. The first day she'd barely managed to stay mounted. Now she moved with growing confidence. Still rough, still learning, but no longer fragile. She studied the scuffs and prints in the dust. 3 riders, she said. Then she frowned. But the depth is wrong. 2 are heavier. Loaded horses. 1 rides light. Nantan gave a small nod. Good. What else? Clara circled the sign, letting the lessons he'd hammered into her settle into her bones. The light rider's horse drags its left rear hoof. See the scrape? And these darker spots. She pointed. Tobacco spit. She glanced at another disturbed patch. The heavier rider stopped here, talked. The light one kept moving. How long? Nantan asked. Clara crouched lower, reading the softened edges where wind had worried at them. She tracked tiny lizard prints crossing one mark, but not another. 2 days. Maybe less. The morning dew hasn't cycled enough to... 18 hours, Nantan corrected. See the spider web half built across that track? Wolf spiders hunt at night. They start at dawn. One night's work, unfinished. And the disturbed earth is still darker beneath the top dust. Clara nodded, filing it away. Every correction was a knife sharpening her instincts. Every detail might be the difference between living and dying. So we're gaining, she said. Perhaps, Nantan replied. Or perhaps they want us to think we are. He stood, eyes moving across the 3 branching paths. Which way? That was new. Him asking her. Clara studied the trails, forcing herself to think like the Comanchero network. The 2 heavy riders cut southeast, toward the border crossing at Skeleton Canyon. Obvious. Predictable. The light rider headed west, into the Dragoon Mountains. Clara paused, working the logic through her head, feeling the gears click. If I were moving children, Clara Hale said slowly, forcing herself to think like her enemies, I'd keep them on the heavy horses, watched close. But if I were smart, I'd send a decoy the obvious way and move the real cargo through the mountains. Nantan's answer was a single, almost imperceptible nod. Nothing more needed saying. The dragoons offered cover, hidden water if you knew where to look, and a dozen ways to break pursuit. They swung back into the saddle and turned west, following the lone rider's trail into rising stone and shadow. The sun climbed, turning the desert into a kiln. Clara learned to ration water, to barely wet her lips while her throat burned. Comfort makes you weak. Necessity makes you dangerous. By midday, the first sign appeared. A child's ribbon snagged on a prickly pear, faded blue cloth, the sort a little girl might braid into her hair. Lily Morrison's? Clara asked, though she knew hope could cut as deep as despair. Maybe, Nantan said, dismounting to read the ground. Or bait. He pointed beside the hoof prints. Small tracks. They made the children walk for a while, easier than lifting dead weight. Tired prisoners don't fight. The cold way he spoke of human cargo turned Clara's stomach, but she understood the truth beneath it. Emotion blurred judgment. If she wanted the children alive, she had to think the way their captors did. They pushed on through the heat. During brief stops, Clara practiced with the Navy Colt. Her shots were tightening, though still far from the playing card standard Nantan demanded. Calluses had formed along her palms from rains and steel. Her skin darkened under the sun, and the hesitation of a schoolroom life was slowly burning away. Toward evening, Nantan halted at a scatter of rocks, barely offering shelter. We camp here. Cold camp. No fire. Clara had come to hate cold camps. No coffee, no hot food, just jerky and hard bread washed down with warm water. But smoke traveled far in clear desert air. She tended the horses while Nantan ranged the perimeter, the work dividing itself without words. When he returned, Clara was practicing her draw, smoothing the motion he'd drilled into her again and again. Your elbow drops, he said. It gives you away. She drew 50 more times under his watchful eye, each correction sharpening the last. When her arm finally shook with fatigue, he waved her down. Tell me about the Morrison children, he said, settling against a stone, rifle across his knees. The question caught her off guard. In 3 days, he'd spoken little beyond instruction. Evan Morrison is 10, Clara said after a moment. Bright as new copper. He could already read before I arrived. His mother taught him. He wanted numbers, wanted to be an engineer for the railroad. Her voice softened. Lily is 7. Quiet, but she notices everything. She draws in the dirt when she thinks no one's watching, mostly horses. She says she'll have one of her own someday. You speak of them as if they still live, Nantan said. They do, Clara answered without hesitation. Until I see proof otherwise, they live. Nantan studied her in the thickening dusk. That kind of hope can break you. And your kind of vengeance hasn't broken you? The words escaped before she could stop them. His expression stayed still, but the air shifted. I am already broken, he said. That's why I can do what must be done. He looked at her steadily. The question is whether you can break and still function, or whether you'll shatter when truth hits. Then teach me how to break the right way, Clara said. For a long moment, he was silent. Then he spoke, voice distant. When I was 12 summers old, Mexican raiders hit our camp. I hid among the rocks and watched them kill my uncle. Take my cousins. He stared into the dark. My father found me hours later, frozen. He beat me, not from cruelty, but to teach. Fear that paralyzes is useless. Fear that moves you, keeps you alive. He tapped the rifle lightly. Fear is a tool. So is anger. But anger burns fast and leaves nothing. Purpose. That's what lasts. His gaze returned to her. What drives you, Clara Hale? Truth now, not something noble. She considered lying, something about justice, about saving children. But he would hear the weakness in it. Shame, she said quietly. I came west to matter, to shape minds, to build something that lasted. Instead, I trusted the wrong people, the wrong systems. Her throat tightened. When Edgar Pike had me arrested, when they put me on that platform, I felt myself vanish. I wasn't a woman anymore. I was meat with a price. She met his eyes. Now I'm still nobody. Just nobody with a gun and a reason. Nantan reached into his pack, broke a strip of jerky in half, and handed her a piece. Then maybe, he said, that will be enough. Tomorrow we enter the Dragoon Mountains proper, Nantan said quietly. The trail will fade. The danger will grow. Apache bands still hunt these ridges. He let the words settle before continuing. Not all will welcome strangers, especially one of our own riding with a white woman. Mexican patrols cross the border when it suits them. The Comancheros have friends on both sides. Clara looked up from checking the loads on her Colt, a habit now burned into muscle memory. You're trying to scare me into turning back. I'm making sure you understand the choice, Nantan replied. After tomorrow, turning back becomes difficult. Clara snapped the cylinder closed and holstered the weapon. Those children are already in hell. The least I can do is try to reach them there. Nantan's gaze stayed on the darkening horizon. Hell has layers. You've only seen the first. They fell into silence as night claimed the desert. A coyote's howl drifted across the rocks, answered by another farther off. One voice alone, then a pair. The sound raised the hair on Clara's neck. Stars spilled across the sky, sharp and endless, untouched by smoke or lamplight. Your draw is improving, Nantan said at last. But you still think too much. I'm trying not to die. Combat is instinct, he replied, built through repetition until thought disappears. Tomorrow we train shooting from horseback. Clara winced. I can barely hit a target that isn't moving. Exactly. Fail at something harder, and the easier task sharpens. Training is as much the mind as the body. He rose and checked the horses one final time. First watch is yours. Wake me at midnight. Clara settled where she could see the approaches, rifle across her knees the way he'd shown her. The desert night breathed and shifted. Rustles, chirps, the click of disturbed gravel. Each sound might be danger or nothing. Learning the difference was survival. She thought of Evan and Lily, somewhere ahead in all that darkness. Of Mary Morrison weeping in her adobe doorway. Of the woman she'd been only days ago. Clean, educated, safe in illusions. That woman had died the moment Roy Cutter's hand struck her. What remained was rougher, emptier, and maybe truer. When midnight came and she woke Nanton, he studied her before taking her place. "You're changing," he said. "Is that approval or a warning?" "Neither. It's fact. Whether the change makes you useful or dangerous is yet to be seen." Clara rolled into her blanket, exhaustion dragging her under. "What if it makes me both?" His answer followed her into sleep. "Then you might live through what's coming." The desert waited, patient as stone. Somewhere in its vast heart, 2 children marked another day of captivity. And their unlikely pursuers, a broken warrior and a teacher learning how to break, moved closer to violence. The canyon tightened as they climbed deeper into the dragoons, red stone walls rising like the jaws of a fortress. Nanton read the ground where Clara saw only rock, one shifted stone, a snapped twig, a scuff in dust, threading them through a maze of narrow cuts and shadowed bends. "There," he whispered, pointing. A thin ribbon of smoke lifted beyond a curve in the gorge. "Careless," he murmured, "or confident." They dismounted, tying the horses into scrub oak. Clara checked her colt. The motion was nearly smooth now after 4 days of relentless practice. Her hands stayed steady even as her heart slammed against her ribs. Nanton led them up a narrow deer trail that zigzagged along the canyon wall. Clara followed, setting her feet exactly where he had, avoiding loose stones. They bellied down amid juniper and prairie grass. Below, 5 men lounged around a small fire. Clara recognized the type instantly, border wolves who'd sell their own mothers for whiskey. Their leader, thick-bodied, a Mexican with silver conchos stitched into his vest, studied papers from a leather portfolio. "Luis Moreno," Nanton breathed. "Victor Vargas' lieutenant. Those papers, bills of sale, routes, destinations. He guards them like his life. If he loses them, Varga kills him." Clara scanned the camp, her teacher's eye cataloging details. 5 saddles, 6 horses. A rifle leaned within easy reach. A coffee pot simmered. No rush to leave. No sign of children. "They handed them off already," she whispered. "The 6th horse. It's calm." Nanton's hand touched her arm, firm and silent. He nodded toward the camp's edge. A 6th man stepped from behind a boulder, fastening his trousers. Younger than the rest. Nervous, his eyes kept darting. As he turned, Clara saw the prison markings on his jacket. "Escaped convict," she murmured. "Promised a clean slate for dirty work." 6 men, Nanton said. "We should watch," Clara whispered. "Learn." "Patience," he replied. "Kills more enemies than bullets." They observed in stillness. Clara noted how Moreno never let the portfolio stray from his reach, how the men positioned themselves to cover every approach, except the cliff above them. "Overconfident," she said softly. "And the convict?" Nanton asked. "Jumpy," Clara answered. "Weak link." "Or the most dangerous," Nanton said, eyes never leaving the camp. "Unpredictable men always are." Nanton studied the ground, the angles, the men. "I could drop 3 before they react. Maybe 4, he said quietly. "But Luis Moreno would burn the papers before he died. Without those, we lose the trail." Clara Hale understood immediately. Those documents weren't just ink and leather. They were paths, where Evan Morrison and Lily Morrison had been taken, along with dozens of other stolen lives. "So we need misdirection," she said. "No," Nantan replied. "I need misdirection. You hold here. Cover my withdrawal." Before she could argue, he was already moving, sliding back from the rim. Clara watched him descend toward the horses. Then he vanished. Minutes stretched thin, warped by heat and waiting. The sun hammered down. Sweat burned her eyes. Then she saw him. Or rather didn't. A shape inside shadow, circling the camp's edge as if the land itself had learned to move. He'd left his rifle behind, carrying only knives, becoming rock and dust. One of the men rose to refill a coffee cup. As he passed behind a boulder, there was a brief struggle. A hand clamped over a mouth, a quick thrust, and the body was eased to the ground without a sound. One down. Then the coffee pot clinked against a cup by the fire. "Kendall?" a voice called. "You drop something?" No answer. Hands drifted toward guns. With cold clarity, Clara realized Nantan's approach was blown. He was still too far from Moreno, who was already reaching for the portfolio. She didn't remember choosing. Her body moved. The Colt filled her hand as she rose to one knee. The front sight settled on Moreno as he grabbed the papers. The shot cracked through the canyon like a hammer on stone. Moreno spun. The portfolio flew from his fingers as the bullet tore high into his shoulder. Chaos erupted. Men shouted, scrambling for cover. Nantan was suddenly among them, a blur of motion and steel. Clara fired again, not to kill, but to disrupt. A scarred gunman dove for cover instead of drawing on Nantan. She missed. The distance was longer than anything she'd trained for, but it didn't matter. Confusion spread. A rifle barked from below. Stone shattered inches from her face. Clara rolled left, firing blind to pin heads down. Below, Nantan had already cut down 2 more. The last pair found cover and answered with wild shots. Her gun clicked empty. She fumbled for cartridges, hands suddenly thick as bullets screamed overhead. Then she saw Moreno again, wounded, crawling toward the scattered papers as heat lifted them in the fire's updraft. "The papers!" she shouted. Nantan turned, but crossfire pinned him. Clara did the only thing left. She stood, fully upright, exposed. She ran along the rim toward a point directly above Moreno. Rifles swung her way. A bullet tugged at her torn skirt. Another sparked off stone inches from her boot. Her movement drew fire. Fire Nantan used, hurling a knife that buried itself in a man's throat. Clara skidded to a stop and dropped to one knee, just as she'd been taught. No time for care. She dumped spent shells, shoved fresh rounds into the cylinder, snapped it shut. Moreno was almost to the papers. She fired once, twice. Dirt exploded by his hand. He rolled, dragging a hideout pistol from his boot. Their eyes met across 30 yards. His burned with pain and fury. Hers held nothing but intent. They fired together. Moreno's shot went wide, his wounded shoulder betraying him. Clara's did not. The Comanchero lieutenant collapsed, red spreading across his chest. Below, Nantan closed on the final gunman. The struggle was brief, savage, ending in the sharp crack of a broken neck. Silence followed, broken only by the hiss of papers beginning to burn. Clara half ran, half slid down the slope, reaching the fire as the edges curled black. She grabbed what she could, slapping out embers with bare hands. Pain seared her palms. She didn't stop until Nantan hauled her back. "Enough," he said. "You saved what could be saved." She looked down. Half the portfolio remained, charred edges but legible. Names, dates, routes, enough. Nantan glanced at the body she'd dropped. "Another of Victor Vargas' dogs," he said. "You did well." Clara stared at the corpse, waiting for horror to arrive. It didn't. "I killed a man," she said. "You saved our mission," Nantan replied, already stripping weapons and ammunition from the dead. "And likely many lives written on those pages." He paused, studying her. "How do you feel?" She considered lying. Saw no point. "Nothing. I feel nothing. Is that wrong?" "It's survival," he said. "Feeling comes later, when there's quiet and safety. For now, emptiness keeps you alive." He pulled a leather pouch from Moreno's coat, heavy with gold. "Payment for deliveries. Blood money becomes rescue funds." Clara looked at her hands. Burned, blistered, steady. The desert watched. 4 days earlier, these same hands had held chalk and reading primers. Now they gripped a gun that had ended a life. Clara pushed the thought aside and focused on what mattered. "We need to read the papers," she said. "Then decide our next move." "First, we move," Nantan replied. "Gunfire carries through these canyons." If there were patrols nearby, the rest went unsaid. They worked fast, stripping what they could use, hauling the bodies into a shallow depression and covering them with stone. Not respect, necessity. Corpses drew scavengers, and scavengers drew eyes. As they prepared to leave, Clara noticed something glinting near the fire. A small silver locket shaken loose from a pocket. She opened it. Inside was a photograph. A young woman holding an infant, smiling stiffly for a frontier camera. "Leave it," Nantan said. She closed the locket and slipped it into her pocket anyway. Even killers had been someone's son, someone's husband. Even necessary violence left widows and children behind. The weight felt right. A reminder that justice and cruelty often wore the same face, separated only by perspective. They rode hard for an hour, putting distance between themselves and the killing ground. When Nantan finally called a halt in a sheltered box canyon, the sun was sinking toward the western peaks. Clara spread the salvaged papers across a flat rock, anchoring them with stones. Her teacher's mind took over, organizing names by date, tracing routes in her head. "Here," she said, finger trembling as it found what they feared. "Evan Morrison, age 10. Lily Morrison, age 7. Her voice broke. "Sold separately," Nantan said, reading. "Evan to the Copper Crown Mine. Lily to Casa de Muñecas in Agua Prieta." "House of Dolls," he translated, his face hardening. "A brothel. They specialize in young merchandise." The emptiness inside Clara ignited into something white-hot. "She's 7. "That's why we ride tonight," Nantan said. "Agua Prieta is closer. We go there first. Evan will last longer in the mines. Lily may not survive another day." He began checking ammunition, already shaping the next fight. "Can you do what's required?" he asked. "Casa de Muñecas will be guarded. Local law will protect it. The moment we act, we become outlaws." Clara looked at her blistered hands, the gun on her hip, the dried blood darkening her torn dress. The schoolteacher was gone. What remained was harder, emptier, and far more useful. "I can do what's necessary," she said, and meant it. "For Lily. For all of them." Nantan nodded once. "Then we ride. And Clara, what you felt back there, that nothing. Hold on to it. You'll need it." They mounted as night closed in, 2 silhouettes against the dying light. Behind them lay 6 dead men and the ashes of careful plans. Ahead waited a child in hell and the promise of more violence. Clara touched the locket in her pocket, a reminder that everyone paid a price in this land, and followed her unlikely teacher into the dark. The lessons were far from finished. The Dragoon Mountains hid secrets in every shadow. For 3 days, Nantan and Clara watched Victor Varga's stronghold from shifting vantage points, counting guards, marking rotations, mapping blind spots. The compound sat in a bowl of red rock, reachable only through a narrow canyon throat or down sheer, treacherous cliffs. 43 men, Clara reported, lowering the field glasses taken from Luis Moreno. 6 at the canyon mouth, 4 on perimeter patrol, 2 in each tower. The rest move between the main buildings. Nantan nodded, adding marks to the map scratched into the dirt. Cave system runs deep into the mountain. Natural chimneys vent heat. See the shimmer above the eastern cliff? That's your way in, Clara said, tracing the route they'd planned. While I walk through the front gate. He met her gaze. She touched the folded papers inside her jacket. Lily was somewhere in that maze of stone and cruelty, along with dozens more if their intelligence was right. A buyer from California, she said, looking to purchase merchandise. Believable, Nantan said. Believable and suicidal are often brothers. He studied her altered appearance. They'd traded for clothing at a remote ranch. Clara now wore an expensive traveling dress, her hair pinned in elaborate city fashion. She looked like money, which was the point. Varga will test you, Nantan said. Then I'll pass, she replied. She checked the small derringer hidden in her sleeve, the knife tucked into her boot. We've been over this. You need someone to draw eyes. I hold their attention while you position yourself. I can give you an hour, Nantan said. Maybe 2. Once I'm inside the caves, I'll need 30 minutes to reach the holding areas. Clara nodded, steady now. Somewhere ahead, Lily waited. And this time, Clara Hale was coming for her. If the prisoners are where we believe, Clara Hale said, recalling the interviews she'd conducted in whispers and back rooms, then the stories all line up. 3 separate sources, none connected, all telling the same thing. The natural caves have been turned into cells, iron gates across the openings. She frowned. The question is whether the keys are kept in one place or... A dust plume on the horizon cut her off. Riders, coming in from the south, a supply wagon with an armed escort. They watched it snake through the canyon mouth, noting how the guards checked beneath the wagon, prodded crates, and scanned for stowaways. No one wanted surprises riding in with the supplies. Tomorrow, Nantan said at last, when they're tired from unloading, focused on inventory. You go in at midday. Heat makes men careless. That night they made final preparations in a cold camp 10 miles out. Clara rehearsed her cover until it felt less like a lie and more like a second skin. Eleanor Whitman, representing San Francisco money, recommended through contacts in Tucson, seeking specific merchandise, young, adaptable, English-speaking preferred. Remember, Nantan told her, voice low by the fireless camp. Rich buyers are strange, demanding. If you're too agreeable, they'll doubt you. So I'm difficult, Clara said. Difficult, he agreed, but not impossible. Make them work for the sale. If they ask for proof, names, references, you take offense. She nodded. How dare they question me? You threaten to walk, he continued, make them fear losing profit. He studied her in the dim starlight. But if they push too far, if something feels wrong, I signal, Clara said, touching the cameo brooch at her throat. Inside, a tiny mirror waited, ready to flash a coded warning. And I run. You abandon the mission, he said. You extract yourself first. His silence after that said everything. They both knew extraction was unlikely once the door closed behind her. Too many lives balanced on what happened next. Nantan, Clara began, then stopped. Gratitude felt too small. Words felt useless. You've been an adequate student, he said finally, You may prove an adequate distraction. From him, it was almost warmth. Dawn came too quickly. Clara dressed with care in her buyer's costume, while Nanton prepared for his own entry, stripping down to what allowed silent movement, rope and tools secured tight against his body. He looked less like a warrior now than a spirit preparing to haunt stone and darkness. The children come first, he reminded her. Everything else, revenge, justice, even us, comes second. I know, Clara said. She pinned the cameo at her throat and checked her hidden weapons one last time. I'll buy you as much time as I can. They parted without ceremony. Nanton dissolved into broken ground and shadow. Clara mounted her horse, fine stock, purchased with blood money, and rode openly toward the canyon mouth. The guards spotted her from half a mile out. By the time she reached them, 6 rifles tracked her every step. She kept her hands visible, posture cold and entitled. Every inch the wealthy buyer. That's close enough, Senora, the lead guard said, his English rough but clear. State your business. My business is with Victor Varga, Clara replied, disdain sharpening every word. Not his hired sentries. I was told in Tucson he could meet specific needs. If I was lied to, I'll take my gold elsewhere. The men exchanged glances. The leader stepped closer, eyes sweeping her dress, her saddle, the quality of her tack. Your name? Eleanor Whitman, and you're wasting my time. She sniffed. I've ridden 3 days through this God-forsaken wilderness on promises of discretion and quality. Instead, I'm questioned by men who smell like tequila and yesterday's beans. One guard snorted before catching the leader's glare. The balance shifted. She'd seized it early. Make them react to her. Wait here, the leader snapped, sending a runner toward the compound. Senor Varga will decide if he sees you. He will, Clara said calmly. She produced a small leather pouch and let the gold speak for her. Men like Varga always heard that sound. 20 minutes crawled by before the runner returned, whispering urgently. Whatever he said changed everything. Rifles dipped, backs straightened. Senor Varga will grant you an audience, the leader said, but you leave your weapons here. Clara laughed, light and mocking. Do I look armed to you? She tilted her head. Though if your employer fears a lone woman. She let the insult linger. They searched her anyway. Thorough enough to satisfy procedure, careless enough to miss the derringer sewn into her sleeve and the blade hidden in her boot heel. They found the obvious knife in her saddlebag, which she surrendered with theatrical annoyance. Then the gates opened, and Clara Hale rode into the lion's den. The ride through the compound revealed more than Clara's distant watching ever had. Up close, she saw the fear burned into the workers' faces, the lazy cruelty of the guards, the way suffering had been organized, normalized, made routine. This wasn't merely a criminal outfit. It was an industry built on pain. Victor Varga received her in what passed for luxury inside the fortress. A natural cave widened and polished into a grotesque parody of refinement. Turkish rugs thrown over bare stone, crystal decanters catching torchlight atop rough-hewn tables. Varga himself looked like a merchant who had grown soft on profit, thick around the middle, but his eyes were sharp and predatory. Senora Whitman, he said, not bothering to stand. You come highly recommended. Please, sit. Tell me what brings a woman of taste to my modest operation. Clara took the chair, smoothing her skirts with deliberate care. Hardly modest, Senor Varga. Your reputation travels far, even to San Francisco, where certain tastes require discretion. And which appetite brings you to me? He asked. She let calculation flicker across her face. My employer has very specific preferences. Young, innocent, English speaking is essential. He enjoys conversation with his companions. She paused, measuring him. I'm authorized to purchase up to 3, assuming the quality justifies the price. Varga's eyes gleamed. Quality is never a concern here. Age range? She pressed. 8 to 12, he replied smoothly. Younger brings complications. Older becomes resistant to training. The words tasted like ash, but Clara delivered them with the practiced indifference of a buyer. I understand you recently acquired new stock? Perhaps, Varga said, though my finest merchandise rarely stays long. Demand is strong. Then let's discuss specifics, Clara said, leaning in. I didn't ride this far to leave empty-handed. As Varga launched into his pitch, Clara caught movement at the edge of her vision. A shadow where shadow didn't belong, sliding along the eastern cliff face. Nantan was inside. Now all she had to do was keep Varga talking, keep his mind on profit instead of security. While somewhere deep in this maze of stone and misery, children waited for a rescue that might come too late. The negotiation had stretched past an hour when the first blast rattled dust from the cave ceiling. Varga's calm fractured. He surged to his feet, hand flying to the pistol on his hip. What was that? Clara let controlled alarm enter her voice. Is this some kind of... A second explosion cut her off. Closer now, followed by the unmistakable crack of rifle fire. Through the cave mouth, guards abandoned their posts, running hard toward the eastern perimeter, where smoke boiled upward. Apache, Varga snarled, though doubt flickered behind his anger. They test our defenses sometimes. It's nothing! The ammunition depot erupted. The concussion hurled Clara from her chair, her ears screaming. Varga slammed into his desk as the mountain itself seemed to convulse. Outside, shouted orders dissolved into panic. Discipline collapsed into chaos. Clara scrambled up, playing the terrified buyer. I'm leaving. This isn't what I agreed to. No one leaves, Varga snapped. His pistol was fully drawn now, not aimed at her, but unmistakably present. Not until I know what's happening. Guards! 2 men burst in, dust-streaked and wide-eyed, shouting rapid Spanish. Clara caught enough. Multiple breaches, fires spreading, water barrels destroyed, the east tower down. Nantan had stopped being an infiltrator and become a catastrophe. Find him! Varga roared. 20 gold pieces for the Apache's head. The guards bolted, leaving Varga alone with his personal brute, a scarred giant named Briggs. Varga's gaze slid back to Clara, naked suspicion in his eyes. Strange timing, Senora. You arrive, and within hours this. Clara let indignation cover fear. Are you accusing me? I'm a businesswoman, not... Another blast shook the chamber. I demand safe passage out of here. You demand? Varga laughed, short and ugly. You'll stay exactly where I... Gunfire exploded just outside the cave. Not distant shots, but close, violent exchange. A body flew past the entrance, followed by the unmistakable boom of Nantan's Winchester. Stealth was gone. He'd chosen terror. Briggs moved toward the entrance, peering out. That heartbeat of distraction was enough. The derringer slid from Clara's sleeve into her palm. 2 shots, fast and final. The first punched into Briggs's kidney, spinning him. The second tore through his throat. He collapsed, hands clawing uselessly at the blood pouring out. Varga barely twisted aside in time. Clara's thrown knife slashed his cheek instead of taking his eye. His pistol snapped toward her. Clara dove behind the heavy desk as gunfire shredded the wood above her head. The curse died on Varga's lips as darkness poured into the cave like living smoke. Nantan struck with the speed his name promised, silent, precise, unstoppable. Varga managed a single wild shot that sparked uselessly off stone before the Apache was on him. They slammed into the heavy desk together, overturning it, scattering gold coins and papers across the floor. Varga had size and weight, but Nantan fought with cold efficiency, an elbow crushing the throat, a knee driving into ribs, fingers finding nerve clusters meant to cripple, not impress. Clara scrambled clear, heart hammering, eyes searching. Her hands closed around Briggs's fallen shotgun just as Varga tore free, swinging his pistol towards Nantan's exposed back. She didn't think. The shotgun thundered inside the cave, deafening and brutal. Varga flew backward, his chest erupting red, the pistol slipping from nerveless fingers. He hit the ground hard, still breathing. Blood bubbled at his lips as he stared up at Nantan with undiminished hatred. You think this ends anything? He rasped. There are dozens like me, hundreds. The trade goes on. The children will... Nantan's knife ended the sentence, and the man, in one clean, merciless motion. Silence rushed in, broken only by distant shouting and the crackle of spreading fire. Clara lowered the smoking shotgun. Her hands were steady, to her own surprise. "The children," she said. "Are they?" "Already moving," Nantan replied, wiping his blade on Varga's ruined jacket. 23 total, heading to the rally point. Lily Morrison is with them, shaken but unharmed. Relief hit Clara so hard, her knees nearly gave out. "And Evan?" "Still at Copper Crown," Nantan said, "but we have a larger problem." He gestured towards the chaos outside. The noise of fighting was shifting, organizing. "Varga's men will regroup once they realize he's dead. We have minutes." They moved fast, ripping through Varga's papers, maps, names, routes, ledgers that charted suffering like inventory. Clara stuffed what she could into a saddlebag, while Nantan wired the cave with explosives taken from the depot. "This won't end it," Clara said quietly, echoing Varga's final boast. "No," Nantan agreed, striking the fuse. "But it sends a message, makes the next Varga sleep lightly. Sometimes fear is all we can give them." They ran. Clara stumbled in her fine dress, breath burning, Nantan hauling her upright without breaking stride. Behind them came shouts, then the discovery of Varga's body. Rifles cracked, bullets screamed off stone. The cave detonated as they reached the narrow defile, rock and fire blasting outward, sealing the passage and buying precious time. But Clara could hear pursuit forming, men who knew how to fight, not just terrorize. "The children!" she gasped as they climbed. "Apache scouts have them," Nantan said. "They'll reach San Bernardino Mission by dawn." He shoved her up a near vertical scramble. "We go another way. They'll follow us, not the children." They broke onto a high ledge as the sun kissed the western peaks. Below, the fortress burned in patches, men scattering like ants from a broken nest. Without Varga's iron hand, the operation would fracture, some fleeing, others clawing for scraps. Their horses waited where hidden. They mounted and rode hard, not east toward safety, but south, laying a deliberate trail, drawing danger away from 23 saved lives. Miles blurred into cactus and stone. Clara's elegant dress was shredded, her pinned hair collapsing into wild tangles. When Nantan finally called a halt in a narrow box canyon, she nearly slid from the saddle. "You did well," he said. Closest thing to praise he'd ever given her. "The plan was always meant to collapse," Clara realized aloud. "You needed chaos to cover the extraction." "Partly," Nantan said. "I didn't expect you to kill Briggs so cleanly. Good shots, for someone who learned last week." Clara swallowed, remembering the giant's stunned face, the warmth of blood on her hands. His death felt different, personal. "That's the line between killing and murder," Nantan replied. "Distance makes it abstract. Proximity makes it real." He studied the stars, calculating. We bought maybe 4 hours. They'll camp rather than track at night. At dawn, they come hard. How many? 20, maybe 30. The smart ones ran. The loyal ones will want blood. Clara checked her weapons, grounding herself in the routine. Then we lead them away from the children. How far to the border? 2 days' ride, he said, but not clean. They know this land. And you, his gaze flicked to her ruined boots and torn dress, need proper gear. There's a trading post at Skeleton Wells, he added, if we reach it before they do. She nodded, exhaustion and resolve burning together. The lesson was clear now. Survival wasn't about escaping danger. It was about choosing where it followed. And after, assuming we live through this, we ride for Copper Crown Mine, Evan Morrison, and whoever else we can pull out alive. Then the next Victor Varga, and the next until my sister's spirit rests, or my bones do. Clara understood at once. This wasn't a tale with a clean ending. It was a chain of narrow wins and thinner hopes. She pictured Lily Morrison, likely sobbing into the arms of an Apache woman, alive because 2 broken people had chosen violence over surrender. I need more, she said. Explosives, strategy, languages, if I'm going to matter. If you survive the next 2 days, Nantan cut in, already tightening tack, we'll talk education. For now, learn what counts. Ride, fight, stay breathing. Philosophy waits. They swung into the saddle as moonlight silvered the desert. Behind them, smoke still bruised the sky where Varga's empire smoldered. Ahead lay pursuit, hunger, and the sliver of a chance to outrun consequence. Clara Hale, once a teacher, now a killer, becoming something harder, rode after her Apache mentor into the dark. Each hoofbeat carried them farther from comfort and deeper into the frontier's ruthless math, where saving one innocent often demanded the blood of the guilty. The cost was steep. In a land where law wore the face of corruption, conscience was the only court left, and justice belonged to those willing to live beyond polite boundaries. Night swallowed them whole, hunter and hunted indistinguishable across Arizona's vastness. Somewhere behind, men sharpened vengeance. Somewhere ahead, a boy labored underground, waiting for a rescue that might never come. Between those points, 2 allies rode on, burdened by both the saved and the dead. Dawn stripped the truth bare. Dust plumes rose behind them, closer than Nantan had judged. They'd ridden all night, but the horses were spent, white foam flecking muzzles despite careful pacing. Nantan pointed. There. A clutch of buildings shimmered out of the heat. Skeleton Wells. We trade horses, resupply. He broke off. Riders appeared from behind the post. Not their pursuers. 6 men fanned out in a half circle, neatly sealing escape. Trap, Clara breathed. Varga hadn't missed this angle. Bounty men, Nantan said quietly. Word moves fast. His hands hovered near his weapons, odds flickering across his eyes, and coming up short. When I move, he murmured, you break left. There's a wash. No. Clara surprised herself with the steel in her voice. We don't split. Not now. We started together. The lead hunter edged closer, careful to stay beyond clean pistol range. Clara knew the breed, professional manhunters who sold Apache scalps for Mexican gold and never asked whose blood they spilled. That's close enough, Caleb Thornton, Nantan called. The hunter grinned, teeth stark against sun-leathered skin. Heard you've been stirring nests, Nantan. Varga's boys are offering 1,000 gold for you, 500 for the woman. Only 500? Clara said. I'm offended. Thornton's grin widened. Spirited. I like that. Lay down the guns, come easy, and maybe you both reach collection alive. Counteroffer, Nantan said. You ride away. We forget this. Can't, Thornton replied. Business hard now. You cost me money freeing Apache boys last spring. Time to square accounts. The air stretched tight as wire. Clara felt sweat trace her spine. She counted breaths, watched for the twitch that meant violence. Her hand rested on her coat, the weight there familiar now. Then thunder rolled from the north. Hoofbeats. Many. A dust wall rising fast, Varga's riders, 30 strong, boiling the horizon. They'd be in rifle range in minutes. Looks like the bidding's lively, Thornton said. Question is, do I sell to them or… Nantan moved. His rifle spoke twice. 2 bounty hunters pitched from their saddles. Clara drew and fired in one clean motion. Her shot punched a third man through the shoulder, spinning him sideways. The valley exploded with gunfire. Her horse screamed and went down, hurling her hard. She rolled, came up running, and dove for a rock cluster as lead sparked around her. To her left, Nantan took cover behind a water trough, his Winchester snapping, forcing heads down. Pinned. Thornton's survivors held good ground. Varga's riders closed like a net. In minutes they'd be ringed by 40 guns, nowhere left to run. The well house, Nantan barked, pointing at the squat stone building near the trading post. Move! Clara Hale broke from cover, zigzagging the way her father once taught her to dodge a charging bull. A round tore at her sleeve. Another spat sand at her boots. She burst through the door with Nantan on her heels. Inside, the air was cool and damp, heavy with the smell of old stone and trapped water. More importantly, it was a fortress. Walls thick as a man's reach, narrow slits cut for defense. They'll starve us, Clara said, slamming cartridges home with shaking fingers. Look again, Nantan replied, pointing. The well yawned open in the floor, iron rungs disappearing into black. Old Spanish work. Tied into natural caves. There'll be exits in the hills. Outside, gunfire answered him. The attack pressed from 2 sides. Caleb Thornton's bounty men from the west, Victor Varga's riders from the north. Both wanted the prize. Neither trusted the other. The first rush shattered against disciplined rifle fire from the windows. Men fell, crawled back, tried again. Conserve rounds, Nantan said, dropping a rider who pushed too close. Make every step expensive. The siege found its rhythm, testing advances, careful shots, long coiled silences. Clara lost all sense of time, reduced to her window, her sights, the clean mechanics of aim and fire. Then she smelled it. Smoke, she said. They're burning us out. Brush crackled outside. Black clouds poured through gaps in the door. Now, Nantan said, slinging the saddlebags heavy with Varga's papers. Hold them 1 minute. He vanished down the well. Clara fired with measured calm as smoke clawed her lungs. When Nantan called from below, she went without hesitation. The rungs were slick with age. She climbed blind, guided by touch, until hands caught her waist and set her on stone. Above, shouts flared as the attackers discovered the escape. Run! Nantan ordered. They splashed through knee-deep water, racing a twisting passage that bucked and doubled back. Voices echoed behind them as pursuers dropped into the well. Darkness swallowed everything but the faint strikes of matches Nantan lit sparingly, just enough to avoid dead ends. The tunnel forked, left. Nantan didn't slow. The squeeze tightened until Clara had to shrug off the saddlebags to pass. Behind them, the voices thinned, then faded. Wrong turns, or fear of the crush. After an eternity, gray light leaked ahead. They burst from a hidden mouth into a ravine, gulping clean air, blinking in the sun. Past noon. They'd been underground for hours. Listen, Nantan said. Nothing. No shots, no shouts. They climbed out to a ridge. Skeleton Wells was a smear of smoke on the horizon. Their horses were gone. Most supplies lost. "But we're alive," Clara said. "Now what?" "We walk," Nantan replied, scanning the land. "Water, shelter, another day. There's a stage route 12 miles south." He stopped. Hoofbeats. They ducked behind a rockfall, weapons ready. The rider that crested the rise wasn't what they expected. A boy, maybe 14, on a lathered pony. Apache features, a mix of traditional and Mexican dress. He slid down, hands open. "Nantan," he called in accented English. "I bring word from the mission." Taza. "The children you freed, they are safe, all 23, blessed by Father Coleman, fed and sheltered." Relief hit Clara so hard she had to steady herself. "And Lily Morrison?" she asked. 7 years old. Brown hair?" Taza smiled. "She asks for the lady teacher who saved her. Says to tell you she still wants to learn her letters." Clara broke. The first tears since the auction block, through blood and fear, and becoming someone she never meant to be, something clean had survived. "There's more," Taza said. "The territorial papers carry news. The governor offers reward for information about the attack on Varga's compound." He glanced at Clara. "They say a schoolteacher from Tombstone died in the raid. Charlie Rivers, killed by bandits while negotiating for captured children. They call her a hero." Clara looked at Nantan. "I'm dead." He nodded once. "A useful lie. Charlie Rivers, the teacher, is gone." He met her eyes, steady and unflinching. "What you become next, that is your choice." She weighed it carefully. No more warrants, no more invented charges. A blank future, if she wanted one. She could head east, put distance between herself and bloodshed, take a new name that never tasted of gunpowder. Instead, she asked the boy, "What have you heard of the Copper Crown mine? Are there children there?" "Many," he answered. "Security doubled since Victor Varga fell. They fear rescue." "Then fear is justified." Clara Hale checked her weapons. Their weight felt as natural now as books once had. "We'll need provisions, fresh mounts, and intelligence on the mine's defenses." Nantan studied her face. "You're sure? Your fight is finished. Lily is safe." "One child is safe," Clara replied evenly. "How many aren't?" She held his gaze. "You were right before. This isn't a tale with an ending. It's a calling." The boy offered his pony, and what supplies he carried. As they turned south, Clara glanced back toward Skeleton Wells, where smoke still smudged the sky. Somewhere in that chaos were men who believed her dead. Let them. Charlie Rivers, the schoolmarm, truly was gone. What remained was tougher, shaped by necessity but not broken by it. Still a teacher. Only now her lessons were written in risk and measured in lives saved against lives taken. "Evan Morrison is still out there," she said. Nantan nodded once. "Then we go get him." They walked into the desert afternoon, two figures against the immensity, bearing a strange, hard-earned justice. Behind them lay 23 saved souls and a trafficker's empire reduced to ash. Ahead waited more children in darkness, more choices between mercy and blood, more reckonings where law failed and conscience alone endured. Charlie Rivers was dead. What lived on had no single name yet. But it had purpose, and on the frontier, that was enough. Autumn wind later carried dust down Tombstone's Main Street, swirling around the abandoned auction platform, where Edgar Pike once sold human misery. 2 years had passed since a drunken outlaw's slap set everything in motion. The planks were split and sun-bleached now, surrendering slowly to the desert. Pike fled to California within days of Varga's fall, leaving debts and questions no one bothered to chase. The Lucky Strike still poured rot-gut whiskey, but patrons spoke in lowered voices about the night the balance shifted, stories swelling with each telling until truth blurred into legend. In the territorial capital, papers ran columns about an Apache ghost haunting the borderlands. They wrote of emptied slaver camps, shallow graves, children appearing at mission doors at dawn. A shadow war beyond badge and statute. Some called him a hero, others a terrorist. All agreed he was dangerous. They rarely mentioned his counterpart, the woman who moved like smoke among towns and trails, gathering facts, stitching rescues together, building a quiet network from Texas to California. The dead schoolteacher had become something more useful. A name that could walk in daylight or disappear at night. Clara stood now in a small adobe house in Benson, watching Lily Morrison practice her letters. The girl's tongue peeked out in concentration as she shaped each line. 9 years old, healthy, safe, living with the Coleman family, who loved her as their own. "Very good," Clara said softly. She wore practical clothes now, a split riding skirt, solid boots, a gun belt resting easy on her hips. Desert sun had browned her skin. Fine lines traced her eyes from distance and glare. "Will you stay for supper, Miss Rowan?" Lily asked. Kate Rowan, one of several lawful names Clara carried now, supported by careful papers and sympathetic clergy. "Not tonight. I have business south." She smoothed the girl's hair. "I'll be back next month. Keep practicing." Outside, Nantan waited with the horses. 2 years had touched gray to his temples, but his movement remained precise, economical. They had become an efficient pair. He the blade, she the mind that guided it. "Report from Sonora," he said as they mounted. "Railroad crews using child labor. Officials paid to look away." "How many?" 20, at least, maybe more. He paused. "Including Evan Morrison." Clara's breath caught. 2 years of rumors and dead ends, boys sold and resold until they vanished into the maze. To hear he was alive. "You're certain?" "Apache scouts confirmed it. He's 12 now. They put the smaller bodies in the most dangerous sections." Nantan's face hardened to stone. "Extraction will be difficult. The railroad has military protection." Clara settled into the saddle, eyes already measuring distance and cost. "Then we plan carefully." And they rode south, back into the work that never truly ended. Then they would get creative. Clara Hale was already planning, her mind sorting contacts and leverage the way it once sorted lesson plans. "The Pinkertons owe me favors," she said, "and a Tucson editor wants proof of railroad corruption." Gunfire cut her off. Shots cracked from the ridge above town. They reacted without thinking, spurs in, horses lunging for cover as bullets sparked off stone. 6 riders charged downhill at full gallop. Not slavers. Worse. Clara recognized the lead man instantly from old wanted broadsheets. "Wade Thornton," she breathed. Brother to Caleb Thornton, the bounty hunter they'd killed at Skeleton Wells. He'd sworn blood vengeance, spent 2 years hunting them, and now he'd found them. "Split up," Nantan ordered, cutting left. But Clara had learned different lessons. She wheeled right, then snapped back hard beneath Thornton's line of fire. Her revolver filled her palm. Muscle memory took over. 2 shots. 2 riders fell. All the hours of practice, the endless repetition, collapsed into moments of lethal clarity. Nantan's Winchester answered from the opposite flank, its rhythm precise and unforgiving. Thornton's men, expecting frightened prey, found themselves trapped between 2 seasoned killers. It ended fast. When the smoke thinned, only Thornton remained, gut shot, bleeding into the dust. Clara stood over him, no trace left of the woman who'd once trembled on an auction block. "You killed my brother," he rasped. "Your brother sold people," she said calmly. So did you. She turned away and left him to die alone. Mercy for the merciless was a luxury she no longer carried. Nantan was already moving through the bodies, collecting ammunition, money, anything useful. Routine now. Necessary. They rode south without discussion, leaving the dead to scavengers. Behind them, Lily Morrison practiced her letters in safety. Ahead, Evan Morrison still labored in chains. That night, as they made camp, Clara spoke quietly. After we free Evan, what then? There's always another Victor Varga, another Edgar Pike, another child in captivity. Nantan studied the stars. My war ends when I join my sister. And mine? She asked. That is yours to decide, he said. You've paid your debt many times over. Clara thought of the network she'd built. Safe houses, sympathetic lawmen, former outlaws who'd found purpose. She thought of the children already saved, and the ones they'd failed to reach. Some wars aren't meant to end, she said finally. They're passed on, hoping the next generation does better. He glanced at her. Philosophy? From you. You said it would come later, she replied, a faint smile touching her mouth. It's later. They sat in silence, fire low, two damaged souls bound by a shared war. Tomorrow would bring violence, always violence, but tonight there was peace in knowing their choices mattered. Across the frontier, whispers spread. In cantinas and missions, people spoke of an Apache ghost and a woman who moved like smoke, of auction houses burned, of chains broken, of a justice that arrived where the law never did. Some called them heroes, others called them monsters. Clara knew they were neither. They were simply people who had seen too much suffering and refused to look away. As the fire sank to embers, she made her decision. After Evan, we expand, train others, build teams in every territory. A network, Nantan said. A school, she corrected, where the lessons are survival, and graduation comes when you save your first child. He nodded slowly. The teacher returns. She never left, Clara said. She just learned a different curriculum. Above them, stars traced ancient paths, indifferent to human cruelty and hope alike. Below, in the vast darkness of the frontier, two warriors prepared for another day in a war without end. Charlie Rivers was dead. What lived on was stronger than any single name, a promise whispered wherever chains still clinked in the dark. Someone was watching, and someone would come. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening, and for allowing this story to speak to your heart. The Wild West still holds countless truths, some painful, some tender, all worth remembering. Stay with us, subscribe, comment, and invite others to discover these untamed stories, from our hearts to yours. Thank you for being part of this journey. Aviso Legal. Disclaimer. Each story shared here is produced for storytelling enjoyment. Certain scenes may include fictional or dramatized elements inspired by historical circumstances. Although AI tools assist us in visuals, narration, and script development, the emotional tone, editing, and quality control are conducted by people to ensure meaningful experiences. We fully uphold YouTube's policies, using no deceptive recreations or impersonations of real individuals. All creative resources are properly licensed. Unauthorized copying, re-uploading, or remixing is not permitted. Thank you for supporting the effort behind every episode we create.